Hey everybody, here we are with my 2025 Ioniq 5 Limited all-wheel drive. This is going to be my 30-day review of my new Ioniq 5. For those of you that are new to the channel, then you might not know that I also own a 2022 Ioniq 5 SEL all-wheel drive, which is the trim down from this. This is the top trim, the big dog in the lineup. So I've owned that for 3 years, been an excellent car, but this is the new one to the market. So I leased this one for the next 24 months. We've got 1 month down, just about 2,500 miles on her. I drove her from Fort Collins back to Boston. I bought this at Stevenson Hyundai of Frederick. If you guys are in the Denver metro area, definitely check them out. They were a great dealership to work with. Off in the distance there in the cul-de-sac, you can see my 2024 Ioniq 6 SE rear-wheel drive. That is going to be coming back to Boston with me relatively soon after I decide what I'm going to do with the 2022 Ioniq 5, because I really got to start putting some more miles on that. These two cars, even though this one I've had for a month and that one I've had for 9 or 10 months, they're almost at the same amount of miles on them. The Ioniq 6 has, I think, a little over 3,000, and then we've got a little over 2,500 here, so really got to start driving that. I've got some plans for some road trips coming this summer, so stay tuned for that if you're an Ioniq 6 owner and are interested in that. But yeah, today we're talking the new Ioniq 5. So we're going to keep this really informal, kind of harkening back to my very first 30-day review of my 2022 Ioniq 5 SEL all-wheel drive. So we're going to do first person here. We're just going to take a walk around the car and everything. And I'm just going to give you my basic thoughts on what I think I like after 30 days and what I'm not too big about after 30 days. So let's do a walk around to the outside. I'll let you guys know what I like here. So obviously, this is digital teal, my favorite color. My old Ioniq 5 is also digital teal. But here on the limited trim, you do have silver features on the outside as opposed to matte black on the SEL and below. And you know what? I really like it with digital teal. I think when you have the white colored car, the matte black on the exterior looks better than the silver, kind of that stormtrooper look that a lot of people like. But looking at the side of the car, not much has changed between the 2022 and the 2025. The biggest difference from the side is going to be the new wheels. And I gotta say, I actually like these new wheels on the limited all-wheel drive more than the existing turbine wheels on the limited all-wheel drive. I just kind of like the simplicity of them. The turbine one's a little too complicated for my taste, so I'm definitely digging these new wheels. Still riding on the same tires as the outgoing Ioniq 5 as well. Kind of surprised that they didn't switch to Hankook Ion Evos, which are EV-specific tires. This being the top trim, it has the surround view camera system, and I really love that system. We'll talk about that when we get on the inside of the car more. New for 2025, the Ioniq 5 is available with these roof rails, so you can put like a Yakima or a Thule roof rack on the car if you want to haul around kayaks or bikes or snowboards and all that kind of good stuff. So for you outdoorsy types, that's definitely an added plus for 2025. I'm kind of toying with the idea of maybe getting a roof rack. We don't own kayaks, but I've always kind of wanted to get some. Not that we have any place to store them in our apartment building, but it would be kind of cool to get a couple kayaks and cruise around on the Charles River up in Boston. Coming around to the front, this is going to be the first big change on the exterior. That is going to be this new front fascia. I think it looks good. Still don't really have a completely figured out opinion on how I like it compared to the outgoing Ioniq 5. But I think it looks nice. I don't think it looks bad at all. Headlights are the same for 2025, so no changes there. Unfortunately, you can see I've got some scratches on the front bumper and along this section right here where I was wiping off road grime on the road trip back and totally scraped the crap out of the front bumper, but it is what it is. It's just a car. Here's another one of those front cameras. So I think my first major like about the 2025 Ioniq 5, besides the new wheels, is going to be the addition of the rear windshield wiper. I could not stand that about the outgoing version of the Ioniq 5. Hyundai listened to their customers I wasn't the only one that had a problem with the lack of the rear wiper, and they finally remedied that problem by adding it. You can see the actual streak from where it's been running. I have driven it in the snow quite a bit over the last week or two. I'm also really liking the digital rear view mirror, which was new for the 2024 model year for the limited trim. I'll show you that when we get inside the car. And then the rear fascia of the car is also redesigned for 2024. I think I like the front end more than the back end. It looks kind of droopy and kind of saggy down low. The outgoing version looked a little tighter, like it followed kind of the contour of the back end of the car a little bit more. This just kind of like goes straight down and then juts back in. I think it looks kind of funny. I definitely do prefer the outgoing rear end. But just like my 2022 Ioniq 5, we've got the same rear lighting system here with the pixels across the entire width of the car, which they did eliminate for the SEL in 2023. So this is only found on the limited trim now. I'm also a really big fan of the new Hyundai badging, which is kind of squished down a little bit. It's nice and flat. It's got this satin matte finish. Looks really sharp. I am not going to replace these like I did with my old Ioniq 5, so these are here to stay. So the next biggest change for 2025 is going to be right here under the charge port door. That is the fact that this is one of the first cars besides Tesla to have a NACS North American Charging Standard charge port. So I will admit to you guys, after living with this for about a month now, I hate to say it, but I feel like Hyundai might be a little early here. I know somebody has to start the trend. Hyundai has done it. Lucid Gravity is now one of the other only cars on the market to have a NACS charge port. It just still feels early unless you're going to be using a ton of Tesla superchargers, because outside of Ioniq and a few charge point stations, really nobody has the corresponding cables at their DC fast chargers to utilize the NACS charge port. So everywhere you go, you're going to be utilizing either a J1772 to NACS adapter, or if I plug that back in, go in the car, or for DC fast charging, you're going to be using a CCS1 to NACS adapter. It's just a hassle. It's just one more thing to have to deal with. You can see in here, I have 3D printed a little kind of holster to hold both of the adapters in the glove box. These are going to be available on my website very soon if you're interested. But yeah, it is kind of a hassle, but as the years go on, charging stations are going to start having native NACS cables on them much more frequently. So the problem will eventually go away, but right now we're just going to live in this weird interim where adapting is the new way of life. It does kind of suck, but at least people like us that are willing to deal with it are going to make life easier in the future for future owners of EVs. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse about that. It is what it is. It charges perfectly fine. In regard to charging, we now have a bigger 84 kilowatt hour gross capacity battery. Usable is about 81 kilowatt hours, but we'll talk about like what my efficiency has been once we get inside the car. I will say, if you are looking for snow performance with your tires, these tires are not good. I did drive these in the snow multiple times. They are just not a dedicated winter tire in any way, shape, or form. So if you live somewhere where you're dealing with a lot of snow, I would put on a dedicated set, because these just kind of really suck, in my opinion. Now, in regard to the parking system of the car, this limited trim does have automatic emergency braking, which when you're parking can be really useful. My SEL all-wheel drive from 2022 does not have that feature. So if you are going to back into something or drive into something while you're parking, it'll just allow you to do it. Here, it will automatically apply the brakes. That has actually been really useful in my garage, because I do have my bikes stacked up against the wall in front of the car. So pulling in to the parking space with the bikes there, it really helps. So I'm going to talk about this in another video where I go over some accessories that I think you should get for your new Ioniq 5. But I did put on some new windshield wiper blades. These are Rain-X Silicone Endura, I believe they're called. They're not super cheap. I think they're about $30 a blade, so $60 for the set, but these are so much better than the stock blades. I actually took the old stock blades that came on this car and I put them on the old Ioniq 5 instead of throwing them away. To let the old Ioniq 5 get a fresh set of blades, even though they're not the best. But yeah, I highly recommend changing out those blades as soon as possible, especially if you're driving in a lot of snow or rain. So another thing in regard to the headlights, because they are the old existing headlights, I still think they're pretty subpar for a car of this price point. I know in other markets, they get the fancy matrix LED headlights. Here, we just get pretty run-of-the-mill LED headlights, and they don't swivel. I think they do auto level. Even still, I've had cars with better headlights, so I still think in the next iteration of the Ioniq 5, they can definitely pay some more attention to the headlights. And maybe in the US, we'll finally get some up-to-date laws in regard to what kind of headlights we can use. Under the hood of the new Ioniq 5, something I am really liking is no more low conductivity coolant loop. This requires a flush at 35,000 miles, and from what I've kind of read and heard from Bob, the electric principal on YouTube, he works at Crossroads Hyundai out in Fort Collins. His service tech says it should be about $300. Unfortunately, it requires a special vacuum pump, and this is not a service that you can do yourself. I know some people have said they have, but they likely didn't do it properly because they didn't utilize the correct tools. So yeah, it's something you're going to have to go to the dealership to get done, but it should be about $300 on a 2022 to 2024 Ioniq 5, but here, no more, so that's a huge plus. Something I am mad to see is that they are still using the same battery from the old Ioniq 5, the same 12-volt battery, so this will likely suffer the same fate as the old cars did, with after 2.5 years, these batteries are going to be completely shot, instead of just having a nice AGM battery that can handle deep cycling for the complex electrical systems that these cars have. I am happy to see here that, at least on the limited trim, I'm not sure if the other trims come with this, you do get a portable level 1 charger, so it's just a standard household outlet on there, but this will allow you to charge up, kind of like what I'm doing right now at my mom's house with this slow 12-amp charger. What's kind of cool, though, is they added an unlock button here. I haven't actually tested that, so I don't know if it unlocks the car, which then allows you to push the button on the car to open the charge port flap. One complaint I do have is the windshield washer fluid reservoir. Very small, does not hold a whole lot of windshield washer fluid. I had to fill this thing up multiple times on the drive back from Colorado, especially when it was snowing out, because I was washing the window a ton. I do wish that were bigger. That is about it under the hood, though. You can see I still have not gotten the front windows tinted. I am going to do that after I get the car re-registered in the state of Massachusetts. Let's get in and talk about the inside of the car. So the interior here is the dark green interior, they call it, with the light lower section. I think it's the best looking color interior that they offer. Even the Ioniq 9 is going to be offered in a similar color scheme as this Ioniq 5, so I'm really happy to see that they're really embracing this two-tone look. I think it looks awesome. So here, this is going to be one of my first big likes, is the relaxation seat, where you sit down in here, you push, I think it's the button in the back here, and it does kind of turn into a recliner. Really like it. I've used it a few times so far. My one complaint about it, though, is when you do put it into relaxation mode, you cannot set the leg rest to stay in a certain position. So once you're in relaxation mode and you have to adjust that, you have to adjust it every single time you go into relaxation mode. It doesn't remember. So if I have it extended all the way, it kind of hits my ankles in a weird way. So I end up closing it back in a little bit. And that's just how I prefer to have it. Looking at the door panels, not a whole lot has changed here. Something that is different from 2022 that I'm not a fan of is the fact that they got rid of the actual contrasting stitching here. This is now molded into the door panel here, so that is not thread, that is just a fake seam. Not a huge fan of that, but I am a big fan of memory seats. Me and my fiance might share this car, but for now it's my car. But eventually, if she does start driving this car, we will be utilizing the memory seat function quite a bit because we are very different sizes and shapes from each other. That will be really useful. Another change I really like is the new gunmetal color that they are using for all the switches and switchgear in the car. I think it looks better than the super bright polished material that they used in the outgoing model, so that's a big plus. Something else they fixed that I really like is the child door lock button. It is now recessed down a little bit, so it's much more difficult to accidentally press. That happened to me all the time with my old Ioniq 5. It drove me insane, so I'm glad they kind of took care of that, put it down so all these surrounding edges are a little bit proud of it. Down here, you'll see this car has the Bose sound system, which basically adds a center channel as well as a subwoofer under the trunk floor. It's definitely an improvement over the 6-speaker in my 2022. I still think it's a little subpar compared to the Meridian sound system and the EV6, but it's definitely better than what I'm used to, so I will take it. Something else I'm not too keen on is they removed the piping that used to go around the edges of the front seats in the car. That has now been eliminated. Kind of sad to see that go. I thought that was a really nice design touch, but it was likely a pricey thing to have on the seats. Now, this is a question a lot of you new owners have been bugging me about: floor mats. There is nothing available in terms of all-weather floor mats for the 2025 Ioniq 5 because the old mats don't fit, because they decided to change these mounting posts for the 2025 model year. Before we sit in the car, another thing I want to talk about is phone is key 2 with ultra wideband. So right now I have my automatic door lock device hooked up to the car, so you'll see I'm not going to push any buttons here. The car will lock the doors any second now. There you go. So if you're interested in that product, that's available on my website at ioniqguy.com. So here with my iPhone 15 Pro, I do have phone is key 2 set up. So we'll just walk around the side of the car. I don't have the key fob on me. I left it over there. Walk up to the car. Door handles open. Get in. All I'm going to do, put my foot on the brake, press start, and the car comes to life. Phone is key has been game-changing. I really like it. I will say, though, there has been a couple instances where I've gone to get in the car and it hasn't recognized it for some reason. At that point, I do have to open up the wallet app on the iPhone, and then I had to hit the unlock button here. But you can see here, you can control the climate, you can set the alarm. But I did have to unlock it there. And then there were a couple other times where I got in the car and for some reason it told me I had to put my phone onto the charging pad in order to start it using phone as key. So it's worked for the most part, but there's been a few instances where it hasn't. And in those instances, it's pretty annoying that it's not working correctly. But it is what it is. I'm still relying on it. I do mostly use my Apple Watch if I'm going to go run to the car real quick and get something. So it's just really nice to have the feature. You don't have to worry about having the key fob on you. But now that we're inside the car, let's talk about everything I like and dislike in here, because this is where most of the changes took place for the new model year. So first things first, new steering wheel. I really like the new steering wheel. It's not as smooth as the outgoing steering wheel, which I kind of wasn't too crazy about. So I do like that. It's got a nice texture to it. As much as I thought I was going to miss having the 2-spoke design, now that it's a 3-spoke, I really am kind of indifferent to it. I think it looks nice, and I still find that if I want to rest my hands down low, I can just go on either side of the spoke, so not too big of a deal. I do like the LED lights in the airbag cover. I think that's a really nice little touch. I really love now that the steering wheel buttons are now reversed versus the outgoing Ioniq 5, because this now matches every Hyundai, every Kia. You can get into any of them and not have to retrain your brain on which buttons are where. So glad they did that. Everything's now in line. On the steering wheel here, you will notice these 2 little lights. You can't see those with the naked eye. They only show up on the camera. That is for the driver attention warning system. And I truly, truly, truly do not like that system. There's going to be a lot of people that echo that sentiment as well. It's a little too invasive for my liking. I do agree that a lot of people are distracted while they're driving, but having the car nanny you into paying more attention, I don't know. It seems a little invasive knowing that there's something just always staring at my face. If it eventually leads to a better hands-free highway driving system, I'm game for it. But if it's not going to lead to that, then I don't really want it. You can disable some of the alerts in the system, but if you do look away for too long, even with those alerts off, it will still scream at you, and eventually it will disable if you have highway drive assist on, and then it won't come back on for a while. So little annoying, a little invasive for my liking. It is what it is. You can't do anything about it here with the new Ioniq 5. The old Ioniq 5 did not have that system. All right, so looking at the dashboard, all the stocks here are pretty much the same as the outgoing Ioniq 5, but this one does have the rain sensing windshield wipers. I did test them out the other day. They did work pretty well. I think I'm actually a fan of what they've done with them here. They seem to be calibrated pretty well. I've driven some other Hyundais and Kias and Genesis cars where they haven't been calibrated that well, and they've actually been kind of annoying to use, so I'm happy to see that they're working pretty well here. I am also a really big fan of the fact that they changed the bezel across the dashboard to be completely black now. I think it looks sharp. It just makes the two screens kind of blend in together, so it doesn't look like there's this big bar in the middle. Especially over here on the magnetic pad where you can put magnets. You can see I have my eyewear holders that I sell on my store as well. Two versions. This lower one is the budget version for $10 that allows you to store your sunglasses in that orientation, or this is the OG original magnetic glasses holder, and you can have your glasses pointing at you if that's what you like. Something I'm also a big fan of now is having the head-up display, or HUD. You can see it right there. I had this in my old car before I got the Ioniq 5, and I really missed it, and I'm so glad that I have it back again. I really love not having to take my eyes off the road. You can get turn-by-turn directions from Apple CarPlay if you're using Apple Maps. If you're using Android Auto, you can have Google Maps or Waze directions displayed. There's a speed limit. It shows you the cars around you. It doesn't have the augmented reality feature anymore, which I think is kind of a bummer because I think that was kind of a neat little tool. But yeah, all around, big fan of the head-up display. It's a little dim when you're using polarized glasses, unfortunately. If you have normal sunglasses, though, it's clear as day. With polarized glasses, you kind of have to tilt your head a little bit to the side in order to see it perfectly bright, but you can still make it out in most situations. All right, so up top here, you can see the digital rear view mirror that comes on the limited trim. I'm really a big fan of this right now. I mostly use it during the day, and then at night I usually switch back to the standard mirror. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just old school, but I do like the mirror at night versus the camera at night. It's just like a little too much eye fatigue for me having to look at another screen up top, even though it does really do a good job at dimming cars coming up from behind. I just prefer the mirror. But for most other situations, I'm a big fan of this feature. Also up top, another feature that I'm just crazy about here on the limited trim is the panoramic glass roof. I didn't know what I was missing, not having it in the SEL. I really, really like it. My fiance likes it. It just makes the cabin feel so open. Even just at night, being able to look up at the sky if you're sitting there parked or something. Just a really cool feature. I know a lot of cars now come with the panoramic glass roof, but I don't know if I would want to get another car that doesn't have it in the future. Another really nice thing, all LED lights here in the 2025 Ioniq 5. I don't know if it's just the limited trim, but here on the limited trim, every single light in here is LED, including the trunk light. So you don't really have to go in here and change anything if you want LEDs. They are just already like that from the factory. Also, I'm a big fan of having the charge port opening button here now. This was not on the outgoing version. Really like being able to open the charge port door with just the press of a button from the inside of the car. I think that's pretty nifty. I know some of you aren't crazy about the new center console design, but I'm a big fan. I really like having the charging pad right here. I like just being able to get in the car and just pop my phone down, have it start charging, and then I can turn on my heated seats with just a tap of that button. You don't have to go into the menu system anymore. Everything just lives right here, heated steering wheel. This car does have the ventilated seats being the top trim, so I'll definitely be checking those out probably in my 6-month review once it gets a little warmer out. I like that you have a second phone slot here to put another phone. You can see here I have my cup holder enlarger that I just finished designing for the new car. Basically, this just slips right into the existing cup holder, and it does give you the ability to put in like a 32 or 40 ounce water bottle. But I'll have a link to this as well in the description to my website where you can purchase that if you like those big water bottles. Armrest, basically the same as the outgoing version. Now that we have this redesigned center console, you do kind of have to lift this armrest up if, say, you want to stick something down in here, because this gap is just really small. So if you did want to slip a purse in there, you'd have to lift up the armrest and then drop it in. But then what do you know, down there, 2 USB-C ports. Mine are occupied by these little LED lights that I'm going to do in an accessory video. These do add some nice illumination in to the center console here, but we'll talk about that in the future. So I already put out a dedicated video about the new CCNC software system in here, so check that out if you are buying one of these cars and you kind of want to walk through every setting and feature of the system. But overall, I'm pretty thrilled with the new system. I know there's a lot of other systems out there that can do a lot more, but for the bare necessities, it's a good system. Route planning is still pretty good. I still think it could use some tweaks, give us some settings to kind of adapt it to our likings. But for the most part, they've resolved many of my problems with the car. You can now precondition the battery down to about 9%. I haven't tested it fully yet, but I have been able to run it down to 9%, which in the old outgoing car was limited to 19%. So you can now show up to a DC fast charger down to 10% with a nice warm battery, go 10 to 80% in 20 minutes, and life is good. And they did give us the holy grail of buttons, the manual battery conditioning button. I'm still pushing on them to add that to the outgoing Ioniq 5. Whether that comes or not, can't say, but I'm definitely holding their feet to the fire on that one. Glove box is basically the same. I don't really use it very much, except for now I've got my adapters stored in there. I'm glad they kind of revised the HVAC controls. They did add a sync button now, as well as a driver only button. Those you used to have to go into a menu system. And in fact, they literally have every function built into this panel now. So you now can't even pull up a climate screen. What I'm not a big fan of though is the gloss black plastic. I just don't know why this fad won't die. Totally hate it. Shows fingerprints, shows dust. Just not my favorite. Wish it would go away. I gotta say, I'm actually really loving the movable center console, especially if you're using the relaxation seat. When you do go back into full relaxation mode, let's just do that here real quick. You do get a message on the screen telling you to check behind so you don't crush anybody. But then you kind of move back here. Let me adjust my calf support. But if I have this in kind of the forward position, now when I sit back, it's a little far forward. I would prefer to have it a little bit more back here, so I can do that. All I got to do is grab that handle, pull it back. Now I've got a nice big armrest here. So it is pretty useful if you're using the relaxation seat, and then you can just kind of lay back here, stare at the stars. Might actually be fun to do some car camping in this car. I've been looking at kind of air mattress options for the back here. Let's get out of relaxation mode here, and then we will bring the console forward a bit. All right, so I am going to show you guys my face in this video. That's because we do now have ratcheting headrests here in the limited trim. I mean, the limited trim always has had this, but this is my first experience with a car that actually is mine. So I do really like it. I didn't know if I was going to use it all that much, but I do keep it ratcheted in the first position, and I do find that to be pretty comfortable for my big fat head. So there's one big omission that I really hate about the new Ioniq 5, and that is there's no more grab handle for the driver. What the heck? That is just, so annoying, because I just love kind of putting my hand up here and grabbing that grab handle when I'm driving. And now I can't do that, so now I'm just kind of getting used to resting my arm on the top surface here of the door panel. I just am really wishing I had that. So here in the BlueLink app, there's actually a couple things that really took me by surprise that I'm really happy to see. So if I go into the charge settings screen, you'll see here, I can manually start battery conditioning from the app. That's awesome. If you're somebody who lives in an apartment and you rely on DC fast charging and you live in a cold area, you're going to want a battery condition before you go to your charger. And you used to have to go out, get in your car, set a charger because there's no manual button as your destination so that it automatically starts conditioning. And then you'd have to just let the car sit there and wait. Now you can do it from the comfort of your home. The problem is it only runs for 29 minutes. In most cases, that is not long enough to get the battery warm enough to charge as quick as possible. If it's 32, 31 degrees out like it is right now, it's going to take about 45 minutes, probably 50 minutes just to be safe. So to me, that's a bit of a miss. Hopefully they change that into the future. But one thing that they've added in here that I really like is the fact that if you go to surround view monitor, you can now request images from the outside cameras of your car. So if you're kind of in a questionable area or want to know what's happening around the car, you can request an image from the front, the sides, and the rear. And you'll see here in a second, vehicle is processing the images, allow up to 2 minutes. All right, I don't have a ton of service here, so that might be the problem, but you can look at all your previous archived photos. So you can see the top-down view, front, side, other side, and rear. Pretty nifty little feature. I know Kia EV6 has had this for a while, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time that Ioniq 5 has had it. So really cool little feature here. I really like that. And yeah, that surround view camera system has really come in handy for me. I really love that top-down view. It makes parking in the city super easy. I don't really use this side very much. Basically, if I'm parking, I'm just looking at that. All right, let's talk about the back seat. This limited trim does have the rear sunshades. I basically leave them down because it does really decrease visibility if you're looking out over your shoulder. Do have heated rear seats back here. That is standard on the SEL, XRT, and Limited trim in the US. I'm actually going out with some friends tonight. I'm going to be driving them around, so I'm sure they're going to be pretty happy to have the heated seats back here. Oh, something I forgot to mention when I was looking at the app before, you can now set the seat temperatures when you remote start the car. So you can see here, I can set the driver's seat to whatever level I want. I can even set the back seats to whatever level I want. I can have them vented, I can have them heated. Really nice touch that they finally added that. People have been begging for that for 3 years now. So Hyundai listened. Thank you, Hyundai, for that one. You still do get the armrest here with the teeny tiny little cup holders, but they're better than nothing. I do sell cup holder enlargers for these as well. I am very impressed with the quality of everything. I've had no squeaks, no rattles. Everything looks like it fits together perfectly. Really no complaints. I'm quite impressed. Hyundai definitely paid a lot of attention to detail with how operations were being run at this new facility. Oh, and they definitely did fix one of my biggest complaints was the rear seat belt. When it gets twisted up, it would rattle against this trim piece here. They did add a very big cutout, so now even if the seat belt is twisted up once or twice, it's not going to rattle against that anymore. I've tested it, and it seems to be doing its job pretty well. One of my favorite things about the Ioniq 5, though, is the fact that the rear seats can slide forward. And then you get this big gap here in the back where if you wanted to put something that's pretty tall that fits through the opening here, you can do that. Really cool feature in my opinion. And last, but certainly not least, let's open up the trunk. Take a look back here. Really no complaints. Here on the limited trim, they do give you the cargo cover. I don't ever use these things. I don't really keep anything in the trunk very often. Under the floor here, you can see there is the big subwoofer, and then this is the new relay box that's part of the NACS charge port. So that does take up some more underfloor storage. In the previous limited trim, you only had the sub in the center, and then there was another kind of opening along the right-hand side, but that is completely closed off now. So other than putting your tire mobility kit here, and then you could maybe fit the 110-volt charger in the back here. You're really not fitting too much under here. You're definitely not putting a spare tire or anything. But you can see upgraded LED light in the back here. Really nice. So over the last 2,560 miles, what has my overall efficiency been? It's been 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour. not super great, but you got to take into account the fact that it has been very cold, and I've been doing a ton of highway driving. Most of those miles have been almost entirely at 60 plus miles per hour. So it's kind of in line what I would expect. Do I wish it were higher? Yes, but it is what it is. It's the middle of winter time. The car is not the most aerodynamic vehicle on the road. That would go to the Ioniq 6 parked in the cul-de-sac. I'm really interested to see what kind of range we can do in this thing when the weather gets a little warmer. With the new bigger battery being 81 kilowatt hours usable, I'm really hoping that I can do at least 250, 260 miles at highway speeds on a road trip. I am planning on changing out these tires to the Hankook Ion Evo AS that I have at my home that I've been meaning to use for the last 2 years now. I bought them 2 years ago. They've been sitting unused. I got a really good deal for them. They were on sale. I think I paid like $110 per tire or something. They were pretty cheap. But I want to pair those with my forged alloy Martian wheels that are super light. They're like 10 pounds lighter than each of these wheels. And that is one of the biggest hits to range on this limited trim is those bigger, heavier wheels. So I'm really interested to test that out this summer. So hopefully we can do at least 250, 260 miles of range at 70 miles per hour. Maybe we could even do 270, 280 with those more efficient wheels and tires. I'm going to put out a dedicated driving video just going over some of the new dynamics with that. But so far, really impressed with what they've done with the suspension upgrades here. It's a little stiffer. It seems to recover from road undulations and bumps much quicker than in the previous car. Most of you know the old Ioniq 5 has a pretty soft suspension. This feels more similar to the Ioniq 6, a little more tightened up, feels better in turns, feels much more planted. Really, really happy with it so far. Wish that the original Ioniq 5 had the suspension that was in this car, but just glad to see that they've improved it. Power, acceleration, all that is basically the same as the old Ioniq 5. This car is plenty fast for most people, 0 to 60 in like 4.7, 4.8 seconds or something. That's plenty fast. Even in eco mode, it doesn't feel that sluggish. I am kind of bummed they did not change the way the brake lights work. They're just as touchy as the outgoing version from what I can tell. I still need to do some more testing, but overall there doesn't seem to be much difference. iPedal feels pretty much the same as the old outgoing Ioniq 5. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the driving dynamics. So all in all, this first month has been awesome. I am so glad I went for the limited trim. I'm loving all the nice little creature comforts that come with the limited trim. Unfortunately, the SCL trim still lacks a lot of things that I feel like it should have. With all the features here on the limited trim, I can kind of say it feels like it justifies the price point, which this one stickers for about $59,000. For the SEL and the SE trim, I do still feel like they're a bit overpriced. Which is a little unfortunate, but the lease incentives on these cars are still amazing. I'm paying, I think, $560 per month, which is $100 less than what I'm financing my SEL all-wheel drive for. So I know I don't get any equity out of this because I'm going to just trade the car in at the end, but for my business expenses and everything, it makes more sense to lease. But regardless, I do think that this car is worth $560 per month. I'm just really having a great time here. I can't wait to make more videos and more content on this and let you guys know what ownership is like over the next 23 months now. So I think that's going to do it for this 30-day review of my 2025 Ioniq 5 Limited All-Wheel Drive. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Check out my store for all the accessories for this car or any of Hyundai, Kia, or Genesis's other EVs. I make accessories for all of them. That's the best way to support my channel is buying my accessories. Or you could also become a channel member for as little as 99 cents per month. For $3 per month, you can get early access to all of my videos as well as a 5% discount to my store. So if you are planning on purchasing a door lock device or something, that 1 month's membership to my YouTube channel could pay for itself with one purchase. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.